Hello everyone, my name is Orchi Banerjee. I am a student advisor with the mySATadvisor team. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a TJ grad, class of 2015, and currently a rising sophomore at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. So thank you all very much for your time today. What we're going to talk about are some of the features of the mySATadvisor software. And hopefully at the end of this presentation you will have a good idea of the software's unique resources and how they can help your child gain the confidence that they need to successfully prepare for the SAT. So just a brief agenda for this presentation. What we're going to focus on is what makes mySATadvisor unique. As you all know, there are a plethora of softwares available that all offer various features, various coaching strategies. What we have put together in mySATadvisor, we believe, is a unique software with a three-pronged approach that will really target what students need to focus on and will eventually, in the long run, in terms of their preparation process, help them reach their target score for whatever college it is that they're applying to. So we first ask, before we try to talk about our software, we first have to ask, why is this product perfect to solve any SAT prep problems you may have? So as a former high school student and as somebody who went through the SAT prep process, I can personally attest to all of these concerns that students may have. And one of the first ones is, how can we as students keep track of all our preparation data? A lot of times we have books kind of lying around all over the place, and we have papers sticking out of our books, and we have sticky notes on our papers, and it's just a very haphazard way of keeping all our materials organized. So, how do we basically improve our organizational skills? One of the most pressing concerns in any standardized test is time. Accuracy is not enough. Knowing the concepts is not enough. The score will only happen when the student is able to combine accuracy and timeliness. So you'll notice that this software puts a huge emphasis on the combination of those two skills. And last but certainly not least, a lot of students, and again, speaking from personal experience, they hate it when they repeat the same mistakes. So they work really hard and they practice a lot of tests, and from their perspective, they're putting in the time and they're putting in the hours, but they're not really seeing an improvement in their scores. And one of the reasons that is because they're not prepping in the most efficient way possible, or they may not know what their problem is. If they just blindly keep doing practice without any feedback, then it's no wonder that their score isn't improving, because they don't know how to improve. So this leads us to mySATadvisor's three-pronged preparation strategy. And again, you will see many components, many features that fall into each of these prongs later on throughout the presentation. And those three prongs are, first, practicing, getting in the hours, making sure you're getting yourself familiar with the testing conditions, analyzing your scores, analyzing your strengths, weaknesses, and then finally using that information to improve towards your target score slowly and slowly. So without further ado, we are going to move on to our practice section. Just a brief overview of some of the features that are going to be followed by screenshots from our website. So first we have our dashboard, our kind of home base on the website. That's where all the tests will be found, all the score reports will be found. It's basically the conglomeration of all your testing materials. What is very unique to mySATadvisor, and no other SAT preparation software out there has this feature, is our intelligent digital bubble sheet. So our bubble sheet comes with a built-in timer, and what that does is, first of all, it gives the student a very accurate sense of how they're pacing themselves, because once they start the test, they'll see the timer on the top of the screen. That'll help them keep on track. And another thing that, again, won't be shown in the screenshots is that the timer in terms of the software, will calculate the time spent for each question in terms of seconds. It will calculate that time, and we will see later on in the presentation how beneficial it is to have a software component that will record the number of seconds your student spends on each question. We have the Scantron, which is very simple, easy to use, and it resembles the actual Scantron that your child will be using on testing day. And that may not seem like a big deal, but when you're taking a test that's very stressful as the SAT, even the small comforts like knowing your way around with the Scantron or knowing the format can be huge in an environment where you're already stressed out. And finally, we talked earlier about efficient preparation. So our software has the ability to mark or bookmark any difficult questions for later review. So basically, it's a way to save preparation time. In our analysis section, we will see basically how students learn what their mistakes are. So we categorize the results, as you'll see in the score report, in multiple different ways. We filter the results differently depending on what topics the student's familiar with. We have the ability to add personalized notes electronically. Obviously, with our built-in timer, we get a lot of pacing analyses, and I'll show you a variety of heat maps and overall visuals that will show the students how they're performing throughout the test. And finally, in our improvement section, because we all want to improve towards our target score, we have our comparative analysis feature, our review journals, our launch advisor, which will again do more with speed analyses and strengths and weaknesses. And then finally, we have our constructed practice feature. And again, we will talk in detail about these features later on throughout the presentation. This slide is just a very brief overview of all the features that I just mentioned under the 4 tabs, and it just shows how the features will be organized on our website itself under the Testing Center, Practice, Progress, and Launch Advisor tabs. So without further ado, we are going to move to our screenshots demonstration. This is a screenshot of our testing center. So as you can see, it's, like I said, home base. You have the practice tests listed, you have the reports available. The great thing about mySATadvisor is that you have access to 12 practice tests, which is a lot of materials, over 1,800 questions worth of practice. On top, you'll notice you have the ability to enter your target test date, your score goal, and your study plan using the green study plan calendar icon. So zooming in on some of the features, we look at the picture on the top left, there are multiple ways of viewing the test, a hybrid paper pencil format. You can download the test in a PDF, you can print it out, however you choose. If we move our attention to the picture in the bottom right, so we will see under the reports column, there are multiple formats for viewing your score report, and I'd like to draw your attention to the reminders column. And basically what that does, so we all know students are very busy, high school, they have a lot of stuff on their mind, and it's really easy to lose track of your time in the preparation process. So what you can do is, so let's say I want to take 1 test a week. I can enter, so let's say I wanted to take test 4 on June 26th of this year. I can enter that date into the reminder section, and the software will actually send me an email of the day before and the day on, reminding me that, hey, your friendly reminder, you were supposed to take the test today. And again, it seems very simple, but it's just a powerful tactic to help students stay on track with their preparation process, which can be very, very useful in the long run. Moving on to our intelligent online digital bubble sheet. So we see on the picture on the top and on the picture on the right, the Scantron mimics the test exactly, starting with the amount of time that's allotted per section. And we see a timer on the top right. So students, when they take advantage of the timer, they will always be practicing under test conditions, which is much more reliable than them timing themselves or looking at the watch or maybe getting distracted while they're timing. Again, it's a powerful way to help students stay on track. An example format with the math-free response that we see on the right, again, you see that the Scantron electronically resembles to a T what the students will be doing on paper and pencil. The same characters, the same formatting. And I'd like to draw your attention to the special question options on the bottom left. As you see, there is a little computer icon next to each question. So students can hover over that computer icon at any point during the test. And for every single question, they have the ability to make an option if they choose. So either the question was difficult or they guessed on the question, they can indicate that right now as they're taking the test. And we'll see later on that the software tracks all of these notations, and it allows for a very useful compilation in the later stages of test preparation. And again, this is a feature that's very difficult to do when you're in a traditional paper and pencil format where you're putting sticky notes on pages or you're putting stars next to questions. Those things tend to kind of be overlooked, or they tend to skip your mind. So having an online software that will keep very accurate records of everything for you, and more importantly, organize everything in the same place, is very useful. So this is a build a test feature. So for example, let's say I'm running out of time and I only want to practice the questions that I got incorrect. I don't want to waste time with the questions that I got correct. What I can do is go to this build a test feature, select which test I'm referring to, and let's say I only click on incorrect and I launch test. So what that's going to do is relaunch the test, but it's only going to have the questions that I got incorrect. So I can continue to practice those incorrect questions until I get them correct. And this is the beauty of marking questions or notating them while you're taking the test. So I could do the same thing and only practice the questions which I guessed on, or I can only practice the questions which I marked as difficult. So what we see is a flexibility pertaining to what obviously the student thought was difficult. Not all students are going to think the same questions are difficult, but the universality of this feature is that it allows for very efficient preparation. And in the bottom picture, we see that you are able to reset a test attempt after every 2 tries. So essentially you have an unlimited number of takes for each test. We have our vocabulary flashcards feature, which is, again, very useful in terms of organization because a lot of students, especially since the new SAT has taken some of the focus away from vocabulary, a lot of students spend time worrying about the hundreds of words they think they need to know when they could be spending time elsewhere. So what we have done is compiled 200 of the words that we think are most important. Obviously, you see very simple format, word, definition, but what is neat is that the student can sort based on either I need to learn the word or I know the word. So essentially, it'll create sort of a living, breathing status update of how many words do I know, how many words do I need to know. And the student can constantly revisit this page, constantly go through the cards and resort them as they begin to learn more words. So now we're going to move on to our analysis section. First thing that I like to talk about is the categorization of results. So just to explain what you're seeing here on the screen, let's say the student wants to see their results by difficulty level. I want to see all the questions that I got wrong that were really easy, and then I want to work my way up until I see all the questions that I got wrong that were very hard. So I can go to difficulty level under the score report section, select difficulty level 1, and what you'll see, or I guess in this picture it's showing difficulty level 3, what you'll see in the bottom picture is all the questions in the entire test that were marked with that difficulty level. It shows whether they got it incorrect or correct, and you'll see the green bars show time spent per second, which is another tribute to the built-in timer in our bubble sheet. And again, the student can categorize their this bottom display by difficulty level. They can categorize it by skill set report. If I want to see all the questions of a particular skill set, it really is up to how the student would like to study. This individual performance that we're now moving to is kind of the home base for our analysis section. So first thing you see right off the bat, very easy visual of how the student did. Not really super comprehensive, but again, if you're just looking for a first look, how did I do? This visual is, very useful and very simple. What we see in the bottom picture are the questions for each section. We have the skill sets. So as you can see in just the first 5 questions, the skill sets are very specific. We have the difficulty level, correct or incorrect, And here I'd like to draw your attention to time spent per seconds. For the first question, we see an orange bar. Well, why is that? Well, because the software and the built-in timer determine that each question in the reading section should take about 75 seconds, average time. But upon analysis and timing, the student took 80 seconds instead of 75 seconds. So the software is going to make a note that the student spent longer than average on a question under the skill set summarizing. And you'll see how useful it is that the computer makes a note of all of these individual questions, where the student spends more time than necessary. This is the My Notes feature. I like to draw your attention back to the previous slide for a second, to this My Notes little journal tab that we see to the right-hand side of the bottom picture. So what this section does is allows the student to enter any kind of note that they want to. As you see, we have an example note here. Literally, anything, how I got the question wrong, why I got it wrong, maybe, check out this textbook page or check out this unit or ask my teacher for help. Whatever notes that come to mind, they can immediately enter it electronically, which again, when we're talking about efficiency, is much better than having to write it on a sticky note and put it on the question, and maybe the sticky note falls out, and then you're looking at the question going, ooh, I don't remember what I was supposed to do for this question. It's a very efficient way of just entering notes on the spot. And then in the bottom, what we see is our review journal, where, it's exactly what it sounds like, a journal, where it will show the compilation of all the notes that you've written for every single question. It's like an electronic journal. And the best part about this is that you can go back and edit the notes. Some questions or some notes may no longer apply, and you can go and fix that. But again, having all the notes and information in one place is very useful. Finally, we move on to our section group performance. This is very similar to the individual group performance slide that you saw 2 slides ago. What this does is it just shows the percentage of questions that were correct. And instead of skill set reports, we have subject areas. And the subject areas are a little bit broader. They're not as specific, they're not as many of them. And the reason we have that is so that students who are starting out in the test prep process, maybe they just want a general idea of where they're struggling. Maybe they don't want the specific skill sets. So, for example, heart of algebra, 13% correct. So without even knowing, what algebra, system of equations, solving equation, graphing, whatever the topic in algebra, the student just knows off the bat, okay, yeah, my algebra topics are a bit weak. Again, it's ideal for students who are starting out in the test prep process. And finally, we get to our performance metrics. So on the bottom, we will see our heat maps. What the heat maps do is they basically tell a student what their weak areas are, purely numerically. So if I enter my target score at the beginning as 800 out of 1600, that comes out to about a 50%. So any subject area where I answer 50% of the questions or less is going to be marked as weak, because the software will identify that I need to get more questions correct in these areas in order to reach my target score. The top picture is a very powerful visual that I personally love, and I wish I had a resource like this when I was preparing, is an overall response metric. And it's powerful because this entire visual represents the test. The entire 4-hour test is in these dots. And obviously red is incorrect, green is correct, but what it does is let you see where you got things wrong during the actual process of examination. So my favorite example is reading comprehension. Reading passage after passage for almost an hour, it's wearing on the mind. They start daydreaming, they get a little drowsy. And if you see, for example, in your reading metric that you have a lot of red dots, let's say in the middle, and you're a lot of red dots in the middle, then that might be a way for you to think to yourself, okay, well, something's happening in the middle of the exam where I'm getting a lot of questions wrong. Maybe it's just that the questions happen to be hard, or maybe it's a strategy that I'm not doing my best on and that I could improve. Maybe I'm getting tired towards the middle of the exam. Maybe that's why I'm getting questions wrong. It's a really powerful visual to make students think introspectively and give them a kind of insight that, again, is not available in any other SAT software. And finally, our final section is the improvement section, which I'm sure is very important to students because, again, we all want to reach our target score. The comparative analysis feature will give a detailed breakdown of how a student did from the same test but 2 different attempts. And what's useful about this is oftentimes in a paper and pencil format, the student will grade their test. They might improve 100, 200 points and think, wow, I'm awesome, I'm doing well, I'm improving, I'm good. No need to worry. But did you really improve, or was that just a fluke, or what? So as you can see from this visual right here, student improved 100 points, but in their writing and in their math no calc section, they didn't change at all. And they barely changed in the reading section. So as a student at that point in time, you're going to think, well, am I really improving as much as I want to? Does this increase in 100 points really mean as much as I think it does? Finally, we have the same response metrics for this comparative analysis feature. And what's useful is, again, just the visual insight that it provides. So for reading, we can see the last 4 questions in the first attempt were wrong. But our eyes go straight down to attempt 2 where we see green dots. So those 4 questions were corrected between attempt 1 and attempt 2. I can go to those questions, check them off my list, and say I'm good with those. I no longer find them difficult. Similarly, let's look at the third row, math no calc. The same question is wrong in both attempts. So what does that mean? Well, that's clearly a question where I'm having trouble either understanding the question or understanding the concept. And again, what's powerful is that you don't get this kind of insight in a paper and pencil format or in any kind of SAT prep for that matter, because it's very time consuming for students to take one test twice and then go back through both of their tests and figure out whether or not they made the same mistakes. First of all, no student wants to do that. And second of all, it's a very time consuming process that the student should not have to worry about doing by hand. So now we get to our Launch Advisor tab, again, our speed analysis feature. So this will give a list of topics where the student consistently spent longer time than average on those questions. And again, you'll notice that this area, the speed analysis, doesn't really have anything to do with accuracy. Again, a testament to the fact that we really want students to improve their timeliness. So if you get all questions correct in a particular area, the software but you take consistently on all those questions, you take longer than average. The software will point that out and say, it's not enough that you're getting the questions right. You need to get them within time as well. Our key focus areas, which is the picture at the bottom, is one of the features that I think is really unique and really useful. And what this is it's a comprehensively analyzed list of weaknesses. It's not your average list of strengths and weaknesses. For example, the example I like to use, let's say you had a question that is a very low difficulty level, let's say difficulty level 1, and maybe you got it correct, but it took much longer to be completed. Or maybe you got the same question wrong in the same amount of time. The software will understand that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be spending longer than average on a difficulty level 1 question. And either that, or maybe you shouldn't be getting difficulty level 1 questions wrong, especially when you're spending so much time on it. So the software is going to mark that area and kind of ping it for you to focus on. And this aspect of the software is meant to connect multiple aspects of the test-taking experience, mainly difficulty level, accuracy, and timeliness. And finally, we get to our gap analysis. So obviously students, if they have their practice and they have all their analysis and they want to know, where do I go from now? Because I have an end goal, I have a target score. So what this does is gives, as we see in the picture in the top, about 3 different approaches for how you can achieve your target score. And what the student can do is pick a method that will take advantage of their inherent strengths. If I'm really good at reading comprehension and I want to improve my score, I'm going to pick the proposed path that has the highest reading comprehension score as its component. Because from my perspective, I'm going to have to only focus on my writing and math and not worry too much about the reading because I'm already good at the reading, and vice versa for students if they're strong in writing or math, respectively. These are just a few brief screenshots of the score report overview. After every practice test, the student will get a 9-page score report that they can download, and it will basically have a lot of the visuals that I just mentioned in my presentation. So as we see in the bottom picture, I'd just like to highlight, a lot of the questions that are marked in orange, as in, taking longer than average, are technically answered correctly. So, you have to think if the student was in a regular paper and pencil format, they wouldn't know that they were taking longer than average on those questions. They would just know that I got the question right and move on. But this software is providing a very key piece of insight related to timeliness that the student would completely miss out on in any other format. So as we near the end of the presentation, I'd like to recapitulate what sets mySATadvisor apart. And hopefully you've been able to see that our software takes advantage of the entire test-taking experience. Again, accuracy is not enough. If you want to reach your target score in a standardized testing format, you must address the entire test-taking experience, and you must force students to analyze their pacing, analyze their timeliness, in addition to their accuracy. It's a two-part approach that hopefully your student will appreciate the features that our software has to help them embrace that approach or ideology. We have a very user-friendly interface, and most importantly, we allow all the information to be gathered in one place. The notes, everything from the notes to the review journals to the score report to the comparative analyses, everything is all in one place. The tests, the scantrons, all of it's there. The vocab flashcards, and it's just a matter of learning where things are. All the resources are at the student's fingertip. No rummaging through papers, binders, oh, I lost this paper, I don't know what my score was on this, I didn't keep track of this. It's all in one place ready to go. And again, you think it's not that big of a deal. I'm pretty organized as a student. Trust me, as somebody who's been through the process before, in the long run, it saves a lot of time having the information at fingertips access. And that amount of time that you save can definitely be used for more constructive prep. And finally, we hope that your student will understand the flexibility and personalization of this software. We really hope that students are able to understand their weaknesses, but we want them to do so within their comfort levels. We want them to do so in adherence to their own study habits. And because all students are different, and we want all students to be able to reach whatever their own target score is, irrespective of anybody else. So hopefully you have been able to see that our software's features enables proactivity along with this flexibility. So students can see their goals, they can set their own goals, they can see their own shortcomings in a way that makes sense to them, so that they will be more motivated to improve upon their shortcomings and again use an approach that makes sense to them and is in accordance with how they want to study. And then this last slide is just a very, very brief visual rundown of the top 10 reasons to use mySATadvisor, kind of just breaking apart all the features that make our software unique from the many, many other softwares that are available. Everything from the strength and weaknesses reports, to the review journals, to the unique flashcards, the gap analyses, the ability to retake only the incorrect questions. My hope is that if you take a look at this small, brief summary of what I've explained in the presentation, you and your students will be able to appreciate the ways in which mySATadvisor can help students towards improving their score and towards, most importantly, understanding why they're not where they want to be in terms of their scores. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. I hope this presentation was very helpful, and I hope that you and your students will continue to take advantage of the resources offered by mySATadvisor. And best of luck for all test preparations. Thank you very much.